Hey, you are now listening or watching the Halos in the Infield podcast, sponsored in part by Noble L Works over on 1621 South Sinclair, where you can get discounts by just mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield. Drink discounts on us, baby. And also by 714 Tickets. The price you see is the price you get, and you also get 10% additionally off in the Apply Now code once you order your tickets just by mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield. Now enjoy the show. Hey, welcome into another episode of Halos in the Infield on the podcast network, following your Angels and talking about much more like we have with Hacksaw, who we have on tap again here tonight. But before we do, I am Todd Fox, and that is
Fernando, the Lone Star Halo,
coming to you straight from Texas, and Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Good evening, sir.
Nice to be with you guys. How you doing? Did you survive the winter baseball meetings? And we're not done yet.
Well, so far we have. There's been quite a few questions and a lot of surprises, Lee, as far as like things being done. The last couple of years have been kind of slow. So we wanted to pick your brain and think about, or have you give us what you think about the transactions with not only around the league, but obviously the three SoCal teams.
Todd, Fernando, what's a credit limit on your credit card? It is hard to believe the amount of money that has been spent, most notably on Major League pitching, and we're not done yet. Do you guys know that in a 4-day span in Dallas at the winter baseball meetings, teams committed $1.2 billion in 4 days to sign some of the marquee guys off the top of the free agent list, and there's still a wide variety there. I think the stunning thing to me is the price of pitching has just gone through the roof. The established stars, whether it's Blake Snell, Max Fried, etc., what Corbin Burns is probably going to get before the weekend is out. But the minute a superstar gets those kind of bucks, 30, 36 million in some cases, it drags everybody else up to the point we got mid-level journeyman guys getting 21 million per season, which to me is just shocking. And now it creates another problem for general managers, I think, is general managers who have young pitchers who they might want to buy out a year or two of arbitration to get them signed to long-term extensions. I don't think the agents are going to do it. I think the agents are of the opinion, if my guy's close to being a free agent, I'm going to put him on the market, because look at what all these guys have gotten at the winter baseball meetings this year alone, and those prices are probably going to go up. I'm based in San Diego. We're kind of experiencing this with two of the key rotation members of the San Diego Padres, and I think it's happening across Major League Baseball. So now it becomes tantamount. I can't afford to sign somebody from the outside, marquee guy. But geez, how am I going to keep my younger guys who've proven themselves and get extensions from them when everybody knows we can go get when you go out on the street corner on the open market? So now it becomes really critical. Is my farm system working? Do I have enough young pitchers that are controllable through arbitration years that I can retain and build around? So I think the landscape of pitching in Major League Baseball has just, in a span of 3 years, maybe just radically changed. And what just happened in the last couple of days in Dallas, to me, is absolutely stunning. I think that's a huge storyline, because if you don't have pitching, you don't have a chance to survive in Major League Baseball.
True.
Trust me, to a couple Angels fans, you're preaching to the choir, Lee. So let me ask you this. So while you were talking, the question brewed in my mind, and I think there's a good conversation that we had with it. So because of where we are in terms of pitching and where it's trending, probably over the next couple seasons especially, are we more likely to see GMs try to buy out the players' arbitration years super early on? For instance, Michael King was a very unproven arm coming over from the Yankees, had a great year with the Padres, and has now solidified himself as a piece to that rotation for the foreseeable future. So with that being said, can you see guys trying to buy those guys out early to secure them, for a decent price?
Well, Fernando, I think it's a great question. I think it's a solid question. Now, GMs recently, I would say over the last 4 to 5 years, have gotten into this business mode of buying out arbitration years. close here. The Padres bought out Fernando Tatis's arbitration years and wound up giving him a 14-year contract extension, with the back end of it being loaded. I think they'll continue to do that, at least in the pitching situation. But I don't think you're going to sign a pitcher to a 7-year contract or a 10-year contract. There's too much risk involved there. But yeah, I do think, to answer your question more specifically, vis-a-vis pitching, they'll try to buy a couple of arbitration years to at least get the guy to his free agent season, and then you have cost certainty. I'm kind of stunned here in San Diego that, they have big dollar issues with two of their frontline starting pitchers. I would have sworn that they would have tried to get these deals done before they went to the winter baseball meetings, and they did not. And now the Padres, like a lot of other clubs, suddenly now know the price of pitching for 2025, and their own guys are going to say, well, look what he got at the winter baseball meetings. I want more. So it's a big issue. I think it's a really hard time to be a general manager, balance budgets and all that in Major League Baseball. But you are correct, Fernando. I think there'll be more trying to buy out arbitration years for young pitchers, but nobody's going to go 6 or 8 or 10 years for a pitcher.
Yeah, because we've seen it a little bit already. Like you already mentioned Tatis Jr. I believe the Diamondbacks did it with Corbin Carroll. And I believe the first to really do it was Jerry Dipoto with, I believe, Evan White. And he didn't pan out at all. Actually, he was traded to the Angels last year. So I know they've already started to do it with position players. I'm just curious to see if in the future they're going to try to buy out some of those young pitchers. But time will tell.
I think there's something else that's now transpired. We'll throw a couple words from the dictionary into this conversation. Sure. Now, all of a sudden, conversation with negotiations involve terms like opt-out, terms like deferred. Suddenly, there's a new vocabulary as it relates to how you finance a current contract. Not with everybody, with the stars, obviously, but I think this now becomes part of the equation, especially with younger potential free agents. Sign me now, sign with me now. We'll take care of you for a group of years. We'll give you the opportunity to, quote, opt out when you get to age 28 or age 30, et cetera. That's started to take place more and more, I'd say, just in the last 2 years.
Well, Lee, I have a question. Bringing up the Padres last show that me and you did, you were talking about how the ticket prices are so high down there and how the payroll, they're trying to see if it's going to fluctuate or not or keep it where it's at. They have to work with a lot of parameters, and it's going to only, price out the real fans. Is that going to be more and more of a problem now that you got a guy like Juan Soto signing a huge max deal? I mean, like we saw the Dodgers announce their prices for just their concession stuff is like doubled and tripled on some of the prices. I mean, a family of 4 is going to cost you like $500 to $1,000, Lee.
I think it's a problem in big markets. It's obviously a problem in San Diego, which is a mid-sized market. The price of spring training games is going up for certain cities. Dodger spring training ticket prices have gone up over at Camelback Ranch. The Padres scenario, and this is a big question here as it relates to what's happened in San Diego with the passing of the owner, Peter Seidler. They raised their ticket prices 50% over a 4-year span, 50. And that was all to build momentum, to have the payroll, to be able to go get quality players, put themselves in a pennant race, get close to being in the World Series, and they almost got there this year, but the window, to me, is closing fast. Now they got a big issue because Peter Seidler passed on. The ownership group has said, we're not going to be over this luxury tax ever again. They took their payroll from, I think it was 231 down to 170 last year. They've told AJ Preller it's going to stay at 170. And now he's got a problem because he's got 7 guys who are due pay raises, led by Dylan Cease, led by Luis Ariz, the rookie of the year, Jackson Merrill, and a number of other players. And if they were to give every guy what most people sense would be arbitration eligible figures, their payroll would go over $230 million, which puts them back into luxury tax, and owners have said no. So AJ Preller here in San Diego, he's got his hands full. He is shopping Dylan Cease, the no-hit pitcher. He's shopping 2-time batting champion Luis Ariz, because I don't think he can sign them both. he might have to trade one, maybe he has to trade two, and he's still got other guys that he's got to account for, like Michael King, the fact they want to bring Jurickson and Profar back, the fact that they're going to have to give a big pay bump to Jackson Merrill. So they got an issue here because, and again, I have a different opinion than a lot of people. I think the ownership, which has turned this into a bonanza business with record attendance 2 years in a row, record revenues 2 years in a row, and now they're asking Preller to pare the payroll back further. I disagree with that. I think you owe this community to keep the payroll at a really high level, maybe not to the luxury tax line, but a high level, 190 million. Keep this team here and keep this playoff window, World Series window open. Because if they have to dump two guys out of here, how do you improve your roster if you're trading Dylan Cease and Luis Arraez? What are you getting back in return? It's not going to be the equal of the talent level that you had, and getting young players in the farm system is fine. But so San Diego is a unique scenario to some other markets, but I think it's a bad look, a bad optic if you're going to cut payroll for a second year in a row after what this community and its fans have given this organization. So
yeah,
they're between a rock and a hard place right now. And I posed the question: you've raked in all these revenue streams. Are you doing this to pay off all the debt because of the money AJ Preller burned through for 8 years, or are you doing it to put the money in your pocket? Shouldn't you be doing it to continue to improve the product on the field and actually get to where the late Peter Seidler wanted to get, which was be in the World Series? So San Diego's got a set of circumstances here, and they're in a tough situation. They went to the winter meetings, pulled no deals off. Granted, there's still guys out there they could go get, but how are you going to add when the mandate from upstairs at Petco Park is peerless payroll more, which means moving people out of here?
Yeah.
You had mentioned on your show that Taylor Ward is a trade candidate, and the rumors are out there. Do you believe a guy like Ward, who is a 25 home run a year type guy, do you think a guy like that might be able to help replace a guy like Profar? Now, Profar has had some inconsistencies throughout his career, but he would be significantly cheaper.
Well, Taylor Ward, had an arrow pointed up season last year. Profar had an isolated, really good season. But his lifetime baseball card says he's a career 246 hitter, not a 280 hitter. And he really tailed off the back half of the back third of that schedule. And now the thing that complicates the Profar situation, though he is a favorite in San Diego and a favorite of the general manager, who's brought him back here a couple times, he hired Scott Boras. And please tell me, when did Scott Boras make a good deal for a club with any of his clients, Profar included? Now, maybe this will drag on January into February, and Profar might not have much of an offer because his back of the baseball card says he's a 246 hitter who had a 1-year special season. So maybe the price tag on Profar will come down some. In terms of the Taylor Ward situation, 25 home runs is pretty impressive. He would be a role-playing guy. But again, what's the price tag on Taylor Ward now? Is that going to go to 10 million? Is that going to go to 12 million based on 25 home run season? And
I believe he's around 9.
250?
Yeah.
He's projected to be around 9, according to Baseball Reference, is what they're expecting arbitration-wise. And he also only has 2 years.
How can you bring a $9 million outfielder in when you're going to get rid of the guy that's asking for 10 million?
Correct.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how many years does Profar want, right? If we're talking about a guy, he wants to be there for 4 to 5 years, that's when it starts getting a little more expensive.
I have a quick follow-up question, if I can, real quick, Lee. You brought this up to the other show, and I just want to see what you think about this. What do you think, in your opinion, would happen first with Major League Baseball as far as finances? The salary cap floor that you were talking about last week or last time, or transparency on the books to see where the money's going?
I don't think we'll ever get total transparency. I don't think the industry operates that way. But obviously the union has much better insight than you do, I do, etc., as to what's being spent, what's being given in terms of gross revenue share per se. I've heard nothing in terms of Florida spending. That's me saying this is what we need to make all of baseball sound, rather than just allow the top 3 to 5 teams to sign all the mega stars. The Mets don't care about a luxury tax. The Dodgers have paid that tax in the past. The Yankees have been above it and below it and are going back above it now. But that's not good for baseball if you've got 5 teams that can pay anything and are willing to pay the tax, and you got 25 products on the field, 25 other cities that really don't have the wherewithal to compete at that level, a championship level. But that's me me saying that we need a floor to spending because it works in all the other sports, but the union has not signed off on that because somewhere in the conversation the owners have come back, well, floor to spending, sure, you got to give us a hard cap. Well, union and the agents are not going to agree with it, so there's a big disparity, and I think that has grown even farther based on what we just saw in Dallas this week.
Yeah.
So I want to ask a question that leads to a bigger question, and then we'll wrap it up with some Angels talk here. So Juan Soto obviously is getting stupid amounts of money that none of us ever thought in our lifetime we would see going to an athlete. Now, did you ever think that you would ever see anyone get as much as Shohei Ohtani did last year with that $700 million contract? That was unfathomable at one point. But did you ever think that anybody was going to leapfrog over Shohei Ohtani?
Well, as long as Scott Boras is in the industry, I guess anything is possible. But it also shows that the rich owners have the money to spend. Now, not everybody is a Steve Cohen at Citi Field who's willing to do this. His payroll, they believe that the Mets are not done yet, that there's another deal coming for a marquee player, be it a pitcher, whatever. They believe the Mets payroll is going to wind up at $380 million. Now, they're not a heck of a lot of owners that can pay the luxury tax on a $380 million contract with all those named players. But that's Steve Cohen, and he elects to do his business a little bit differently now than Hal Steinbrenner. And he likes to do his business kind of like the Dodgers have done creatively with their contracts. The Dodgers owe 7 players deferred money starting in 2028 for the next 18 years after that. You can do that. You can't do it for everybody on the roster, but this is Guggenheim, which is printing dollar bills in the back room at Dodger Stadium because it's one of the wealthier franchises there are. At the end of the day, I was staggered by the amount of money that was given to Juan Soto. He's a really good player, but is he a generational player? I don't know. Is Juan Soto more of a generational player than Shohei Ohtani, who can do multiples of things and has already done it? Is Juan Soto, when we think of the history of baseball, is he equal to the greatness of Ted Williams, Henry Aaron, Willie Mays? I don't think so yet. And I don't believe everything that Juan Soto says. His introductory press conference was full of Scott Boras phrases. He was feeding him those lines. For Soto to say, hey, the Yankees were right there, but I chose the Mets because I think we're good. We have enough talent to win a World Series, to which I rolled my eyes and said, have you looked at their pitching staff? You think a pitching staff with Kodai Senga and Dave Peterson, that you're going to the World Series? You just went to the World Series with a really good front-end pitching staff. So, and the Yankees, obviously, after the Mets did what they did with Soto, the Yankees spun immediately to plan B, and now you look at their pitching staff, it's even better than the World Series pitching staff that they had last fall. So they've done that, and then the Yankees go right back into the marketplace, and now they get an ace closer in Williams coming from the Milwaukee Brewers, and the rumor mill is running rampant that they're not done, that they're talking this weekend to Alex Bregman. And again, the Yankees, what they did was they took the money that they could have given Soto, that Soto rejected, and now they've parsed it up into maybe 3 pieces of pie. And if they could get Bregman or they get Christian Walker, the Yankees are a more complete team than they were last year when they were playing in the World Series. Now, granted, Soto is not there, but so Soto, the Mets, the pressure on him is going to be ungodly. We saw Soto here for parts of 2 seasons where he just was nowhere near the guy that had been with the Washington Nationals. That dude was hitting 226. He was hitting 246. And thank God he was in San Diego doing that, where the media crush is not bad. If that dude hits 226 or 246 at Citi Field in New York, you think the media is going to go easy on him? You think those fans at Citi Field are going to go easy on him? So, and again, he doesn't have a Aaron Judge hitting behind him in the Mets lineup now. So the whole chemistry of Soto in New York has a very different feel and look to it because he's not wearing pinstripes anymore. He's playing for the Mets, and I don't think the Mets have a true full roster equal to what he played with last year across town with the Yankees. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this thing comes around. I don't think the Mets are done. I know the Yankees are still not done.
So the bigger question that I had, and before you laugh at me, in our lifetime, Lee, do you believe we will see a $1 billion athlete?
Revenue streams in baseball have rocketed. TV ratings have rocketed. Attendance has rocketed. And despite some of the absurd things that the commissioner, Rob Manfred, has proposed that he'd like to add to baseball, the game of baseball itself, the 9-inning game of baseball in the 10th and the 11th inning, it's a better brand of baseball right now, and it's more excitable, etc. And it's appealing, I think, to a much younger demographic. So if you throw all those things into the pot, I think revenue streams continue to grow. And the revenue streams grow, the pay level for star players grows. So yeah, maybe down road we're going to see something like that. But baseball's explosive salaries, guys, are no different than what's happening in the NFL to star quarterbacks, what's happening to a hell of a lot of guys in the NBA and even the National Hockey League. They've crossed the threshold. They got $11 million goaltenders now in the NHL because of TV money, fan support money, corporate advertising. So the whole landscape financially of the game has drastically changed. And baseball's arrow is really pointed up. I think the demographics, I think, in baseball have drastically changed.
Well, the difference with Major League Baseball is they don't have a hard salary cap. So in theory, you can give somebody $1 billion a year if you wanted to.
Well, if you have the ownership that wants to write the check. But it's becoming very apparent that ownership may now only be select to New York, Los Angeles. It's not that way anymore in Boston, in the Red Sox nation, state of New England. It's not that way in Chicago, where the Cubs were doing it for a couple of years, decided no. Not that way in Atlanta anymore. So we'll spin back to my question of a couple minutes ago. Is it good if you have 5 really wealthy baseball teams and 25 teams that can't compete? I don't know. That's good for the game.
Correct. That kind of remind me of the NBA at some point, like in the 80s. You had the haves and a lot of have-nots. One quick last question I have, Lee, if I could. One trade that dropped earlier today involves the Angels in a way because he's been an Angel killer. I mean, the guy can hit blindfolded Angels pitching. Kyle Tucker going to the Cubs. What do you make of that trade, and who do you think won that trade?
Well, I'll go back to maybe the first comment I made here. Everything's changed as it relates to contracts and guys right on the front doorstep of free agency. I think Houston woke up with the realization, because of the Soto contract and contracts for pitchers, this guy's not going to negotiate a contract extension to stay here. He's going to go somewhere else. And the exact same thing's happened to Bregman. And all of a sudden, Houston is in a world of hurt. They made a 3-for-1 deal. I don't know that they got enough in the trade from the Chicago Cubs, but their hand was forced. And I think Houston's final thought was, we can't sign this guy because of the prices everybody else has paid to stars, and we're going to lose him if we don't trade him now or trade him at the deadline. So they felt this is the time to do it, and boom. So he winds up going to Wrigley Field, where you think he's going to hit a few home runs off those buildings out there in left center field. So, I mean, he goes there, and he'll be a free agent. We'll see if the Cubs up the ante and re-sign him, but it's now Chicago's challenge to keep this guy from going on the market. Houston kind of waved the white flag, sadly.
The Cubs could have a very exciting outfield between Suzuki, Bellinger, and now Tucker. I mean, that could be one of the more powerful outfields in Major League Baseball.
Well, if they keep it together.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes, there is a lot of talk.
Bellinger is being shopped, and then Bellinger is going to be traded. And Bellinger is owed $54 million over the next 2 years of his contract, and he did have a bounce-back season at Wrigleyville last year, but Chicago's obviously shopping him to move him. So what they've done is they're bringing Tucker in, and they'll pay Tucker, and then down the road they got to have to extend Tucker, and they're ridding themselves or attempting to rid themselves of $27 million per year for Cody Bellinger. I also said moments ago the Yankees aren't done. Bellinger's name is part of that Yankee conversation, just like Bregman's name is part of that Yankee conversation. So, like I said, there's a bunch of big names still out there, a bunch of cities that still have money in their checking account to make another deal for another big name.
last thing I have for you, Lee. Um, I had asked you on your show, I asked you to grade the Angels offseason so far. You had used the term, which our audience is going to love, that Artie's been going to Dollar General. So I had to give you a little bit of a hard time about that. Not that you're wrong. I do believe that's a perfect description, but I will give the ownership a little bit of credit thus far. These aren't great moves in terms of the sex appeal to the names, right? They're very bland names in a vacuum. But the Angels' problem has been depth and what happens when those marquee guys get hurt. With that being said, they've addressed that this offseason. Where do you rank the Angels grade-wise right now where we sit?
Artie Moreno would tell you we're the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. He will try to sales pitch you. We're in the number 2 market in the country. If you're in the number 2 market in the country, and he did a good job, he and his people, retaining a large bulk of the TV contract, the aftermath of the mess with Diamond Sports bankruptcy, he got most of his money retained on this extension. Well, if you're the number 2 market in the country, why are you shopping at Dollar General? Because Dollar General, those are all the acquisitions that they've made. Outside of Kikuchi, Toronto via Houston, Kikuchi's an established guy. They need more established guy. I think they've added at least 7 major leaguers in the offseason. Those are roster fill-in guys. I happen to like Travis d'Arnaud. I think he helps you. I think Kevin Newman's a multi-position guy, especially with your shortstop coming off shoulder surgery, not ready to start the season. So there's value in that. There's value in Kyle Hendricks if Hendricks is completely healthy. Obviously, you got Soler. They may lead the world in potential DHs. I don't know how many of these guys can play in the field right now. That's the big issue there. They took a flyer on a guy who was very promising with the Cardinals. It was a 16-game winner and encountered all kinds of arm problems in Pittsburgh and Colorado. They must see upside. Maybe they think they can solve the physical issues for Dakota Hudson, because he was really a bright light as part of a St. Louis Cardinal rotation, also included Jack Flaherty at one time. So, I mean, they brought guys in for depth. They brought some guys in who are role-playing guys, but they're not done. Here's the wild card thing, and it just happened yesterday. Nolan Arenado's got a no-trade contract. The Cardinals' third baseman is going to be moved. Arenado told the Cardinals he would accept the trade to 6 different teams. He's from out here. One of the teams is the Angels. Now, granted, that's a big money contract for 2 more seasons, but it's only 2 seasons. And I don't think he's done as a player. His stats tailed off a little bit, Todd, the last year in St. Louis, but he's still Gold Glove. So if he says he's willing to come be with the Halos, Angels, make that phone call. Area code in St. Louis is 314. If you want me to give you Tom Ziliak's phone number, I will. I mean, here's the issue. You get him, that's a credibility acquisition.
Yep.
Whether it's to play third base, whether that's to flip him to first base, whether that's to DH him. And of course, they got the historical injury factor with Anthony Rendon, but if you can get him, you have to give up something, I was told Reed Detmers and somebody else. But if you could do that, and St. Louis wants to move on from the contract and they need pitching, if you could do that, that'd be a huge credibility check for Artie Moreno in terms of we're increasing our payroll. That's what he said. We've got all these depth guys. That's what Perry Menezian has done. And now we got a star. And if you could bring that star, and then you cross your fingers that Trout and Rendon have bounced back seasons, now your whole club changes. Because Arenado, give me my glove, give me the ball, get the hell out of the way. He doesn't come out of the lineup, plays 154 to 158 games a season.
Absolutely.
If they could get Arenado, and he's one of the 6, that's one of the 6 teams he approved on, and he'd be willing to come home, man, I'd be calling St. Louis, and I'd be trying to move names in and out of a potential trade to see if he could make that deal. That would change, I think, the entire atmosphere in the 714 area code if Artie Moreno and his people could execute a Nolan Arenado acquisition. Because if we're going to spring training and all we got is the guys you got at Dollar General, nothing changes.
Correct. See, this is why, Lee, I'm going to give you homework. You need to reach out to the contacts you have and start emailing them the numbers, because, boy, that sounds great. That would make a huge difference on this lineup.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
I mean, the other names just off the top of my head, I can't remember them all. But the Yankees, the Mets. I don't think the Yankees are in it. The Yankees are going a different direction. The Mets, I guess anything is possible, but they need pitching. The Dodgers, I don't think the Dodgers are in on the Arenado race. But those were some of the clubs that he mentioned he'd accept a deal to. But it also included the Halos. Make the phone call and find out.
Yeah, and just to put a bow on what you said, I think the most important thing you said is his durability. And one thing that the Angels have really put an emphasis on is durability. A lot of the guys they have gotten from Dollar General, say what you want about him, they are durable. Kikuchi pitches his innings much like Tyler Anderson does. And that's going to help the rotation going forward because they're taking the ball every fifth day.
Yeah, but I hate to throw cold water on you on your own show. The
No, please do.
Fernando, the Angel rotation right now is made up of number 4 pitchers.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we've said
ace. There's no ace there. Now, that could change as long as I'm sending memos to Arte Moreno. Mm-hmm. That could change. Get me Arenado. And by the way, get me Jack Flaherty or get me Walker Buehler. Because if you get one of those pitchers as the front end of the rotation with Kikuchi, and they are talking to the Japanese pitcher, Sigarano, I think is his name. If you could bring me Flaherty or Buehler on top of what you've already acquired with Kikuchi, and then you make a significant trade on a 2-year rental for Nolan Arenado, suddenly the whole landscape of Angel baseball, the whole view of the ownership drastically changes. But you have to do something of significance with significant names, because otherwise you're going to spring training in the Cactus League with Dollar General acquisitions, and that's not going to help you.
Yeah, and this could be the year to do it because the division does look like it's getting weaker with Houston almost seemingly throwing the white flag. So,
yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see. And of course, we haven't touched bases on the Dodgers, and just briefly, they have spent their payroll as of tonight is $309 million, which is pretty doggone impressive. But they have not solved the Teoscar Hernandez situation. Are they going to re-sign Flaherty? Are they going to come back on a 1-year deal with Buehler? So the Dodgers, there are more acquisitions to be made. But I mean, their pitching staff looks spectacular, but I think they got a huge hole in part of their outfield. So we'll see what else the Dodgers have to do. Now, if they lose Teoscar Hernandez, because he's rumored talking to Baltimore and Boston simultaneously, and both of them want a veteran big bat. Holy cow. If the Dodgers lose them, then even though they got Snell, they're giving ground somewhere else. But if the Dodgers re-sign Teoscar, and then maybe they bring back one of the pitchers, and they still got Kershaw there that they're going to address. So the Dodgers have a roster that's so different than anybody else in Major League Baseball. But we're not done yet. Winter baseball meetings concluded. But I'll tell you, going towards Christmas, we'll see what kind of gifts are under that Christmas tree. The Dodgers, and obviously, I hope there's the right Christmas gifts underneath the Angels tree. I don't know what Christmas gifts or a lump of coal we're going to get underneath the Padres Christmas tree because of their budget issues.
Yeah, we're going to have to bring you back on soon because we didn't even touch on the Giants either. So, we'll have to do this again soon, Lee.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll just throw this last minute rumor out there. Buster Posey's been really active. I mean, I was floored when Willie Adames decided to go there because there's nothing there in terms of the rest of that roster. Buster Posey's not done. I mean, the rumor mill coming out of the winter meetings is that they are in as a finalist and they're willing to overpay on Corbin Burns. And now the latest rumor is they're willing to make 1-year offers to Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. Now, both of them have 200,000 miles on their arms, both coming off some physical woes. But if you could have Corbin Burns, Scherzer, Verlander, Logan Webb, the young left-hander Kyle, what's his last name, Harrison, all of a sudden the Giants look like a really, really different team. So Buster's not done shopping either.
Pitching is what you need to at least compete.
Absolutely. Confirmed. Just asked Detroit last year. But Lee, it was a pleasure once more. You giving us your time on here. We know you're a busy man, and we forgot to do one thing. That is, let everybody know where they can reach you and where they can find your great content, because you're not only about baseball, Lee. You talk about all the sports, correct?
Well, we do cover it all. I have a website. It's all written. If you check it every morning, that's what you dudes need to do every morning with your first cup of coffee, is check my website, leehacksawhamilton.com. You'll be absolutely amazed at the volume of information there. And like you, I do podcasts. I do podcast on Monday, podcast on Thursday. They're up on my YouTube channel, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Subscribe to that. You'll get the alerts every time we put additional stuff up there. So yeah, I'm talking a ton of baseball in the bigger picture, in addition to the teams here in Southern California. Guys, great to chat with you. Have a happy holiday. I'm sure we'll hook up again.
Absolutely, Lee. Say hi to John Riley for us.
My pleasure. Thanks, gentlemen.
See ya.